So Mark Richt was good for 76% wins in 15 years. We'll see what Kirby Smart has in store for the faithful in Athens. We bring in Will Gunter from Fox Sports Radio in Columbia, South Carolina, to help us break down this hire, transitioning from Mark Richt and now in Miami to Kirby Smart at Georgia. So, Will, you're all over the SEC and definitely have opinions about the coaching situations and track all these guys. So we know what Kirby Smart accomplished at Alabama. Your thoughts about the hiring of him as a head man there at Georgia?
Yeah, for starters, I'm not a believer in big-time programs, and Georgia fits that bill. And I'll use Florida as the perfect example. The last few times Florida's had to go out and make a new hire post Steve Spurrier, they hired a guy who'd never been a head coach, Ron Zook. That 23-14, but that failed. Then they went out and hired a head coach in Urban Meyer, and he wins 2 championships. After the Urban Meyer era, they hire a guy that's never been a head coach, and Will Muschamp, and they deemed that to be a failure. Now you have Georgia, a top 10 job in the country, and some people will even deem it a top 5 job. And you hire a guy who's never been a head coach, and he's going to follow on the heels of a guy, as you pointed out, who's won 78% of his games, who wins SEC championships, who runs a good program. To me, you've instantly said, hey, in 2016, the bar is SEC East or failure. Remember, they didn't – you and I, Mark, we could go to Georgia and recruit top 10 football classes. Recruits fall in your lap at Georgia. Kirby Smart's known as a recruiter, but they didn't hire – they don't want to improve recruiting. They want to improve coaching. I find it funny that you want to improve coaching, so you hire a guy who's never been a head coach. You're hiring him strictly because he's supposed to be the next great head coach.
So Kirby Smart's run at Alabama has been very successful on the defensive side of the ball. The current front seven especially, but the entire defense, and they fixed a lot in the secondary from last season. That was the real weak spot. Is maybe the best defense we've seen in the last few years in college football. Other than defense, just anything in particular that Georgia hangs its hat on in regards to Kirby Smart's approach to coaching, anything that he's said, anything that you've seen in the past that lets us know this is the kind of stamp he's going to put on this program?
Well, I think it's going to be similar to Georgia. He, during his press conference, and I'm going to use the quotations, the process, which is the scary word that Nick Saban loves to use. And he said it's never easy, and it is a process, and you're building and you're getting guys to buy in. But again, Mark, this isn't a rebuilding job. I mean, that's the scary thing if you're a Georgia fan. You went 9-3 with goons for quarter. I mean, you had no quarterback. You had nobody back. Grayson Lambert was not a good quarterback. They didn't have anybody. Bryce Ramsey's punting midway through the season. Nick Chubb got hurt. 9-3. I mean, that's cobbled together. So this isn't rebuilding. You go in next year, Kirby Smart goes in, and it's keeping the same stamp, but upping it to 10 games, winning the East. I'll say this: he's going to rely on defense, like we've seen at Alabama and like we've seen at Georgia. And Georgia is a unique national program that, for some reason, 12 5-star running backs all want to go there at the same time, despite there only being one football. I mean, look at how they recruit running backs. So I don't see much of a change in philosophy. He's not going in there and bringing an air raid, throw it all over the building type offense, and I don't see him changing the defense. It's going to be very, very similar. They just want to win more games.
Yeah, I never understood that mentality, but it is amazing when certain positions at certain schools can be stacked up like that. When you see Keith Marshall run for like 1,300 yards backing up Todd Gurley, and 2 years later, I know injuries had something to do with it, but he's still 3rd or 4th on the depth chart trying to get some carries there at Georgia. So just your broad view perspective on the SEC Eastern Division. It's been since Urban Meyer walked off the field against Nick Saban that last time in the SEC championship game in 2009 that Bama took the crown from Florida, and it's been all SEC West. If you look at the cumulative scores and the results of the games, they're winning 80-85% of the games. Georgia's a power. They should be, but they can't get over the hump. Tennessee is coming like gangbusters. To me, it appears to be Tennessee's deal right now, that they are the program in the best situation right now to win and dominate this this division at least.
It's an interesting situation. You lose 3 guys in a 7-team division: Steve Spurrier, Mark Richt, and Gary Pinkel. I mean, think about the experience and the knowledge and the history of those 3 guys, and it's Will Muschamp, Kirby Smart, and Barry Odom. And Will Muschamp out of that group is the veteran guy. He's got 4 years of experience, and a lot of people say that he failed. So you're right. Butch Jones, Jim McElwain in year 2 is set up. Butch Jones has been building to this. And all of a sudden, those are the guys that you're exactly right. They're set to take this division. I think it's interesting, and we've debated this a lot on local radio today in terms of the Eastern Division. One offensive-minded guy, and that's Butch Jones, who started his career as a defensive coach. Think about that. The rest, Barry Odom, defense. Kirby Smart, defensive-minded. Will Muschamp, defensive-minded. Mark Stoops, defensive-minded. Derek Mason, defensive-minded. And Jim McElwain, I forget him, offensive-minded. So all of a sudden, it's still a defensive-minded division there. I think that's kind of weird. I think Butch Jones is in the best position. I really am not buying Florida right now. The division is still in upheaval. Jim McElwain's got to show me more. He's got to recruit better. He's got to get Will Greer back. I mean, Will Greer this year with Jim McElwain looked great. Treon Harris with Jim McElwain looked like the same Florida team I've seen for the last 2 seasons. They put up 2 points against Florida State. They put up 9 against Vanderbilt. They put up 20 against Florida Atlantic and a Hail Mary against Alabama there in the SEC championship. So nothing changed. I think Butch Jones has recruited exceptionally well. They've got to win games. If they beat Northwestern in the bowl game, that's 9 wins, and you feel like they'll be poised to be the hot pick next year to win the East. So you're right. It's wide open. It's not very strong. It's there for the taking. Can anybody rise up and challenge Alabama and Texas A&M and LSU and these guys in the West?
Yeah, and we assume Florida's going to be able to replace the defense just because that's been a given, but it's not a given that they're going to be able to replace all those NFL players on defense. And Tennessee, again, for a second consecutive year, out of the contending teams, has the quarterback coming back as well, and Josh Dobbs. So I think Tennessee's in great position. And for anybody jumping on Butch Jones right now for losing 4 games, you got to look at the context of the losses, and they played really well in those games. It just made some crucial mistakes. Now, if this continues into next season and the season after, that's another argument. But at this point, considering where that Tennessee program's been since like 2007, they're in good shape to challenge, Georgia, Florida, and that's pretty much it as it appears for 2016. All right, Will Gunter from Fox Sports Radio there in Columbia, South Carolina, helping us out on this Kirby Smart hire by Georgia. Thanks, Will.
Hey, always great to join you and talk a little college football. Look forward to doing it some more.